Well, we're fortunate to have with us today Criag Thatcher, who is from Salt Lake City area, has been involved with the family business. Many of you will have the opportunity. You know, we talk about entrepreneurship. Often we think and focus on small business creation, and that's wonderful, but we also like to understand what it is when you're buying perhaps a family business. And so his business has been around for some time. He'll be telling you a little bit more about that, and I think they've been able to avoid debt. So there's some pretty exciting things. Supplying chemicals worldwide. But rather than me telling you more about it, would like to have his son Scott Thatcher give a little bit of an introduction. But please join me in welcoming both Scott Thatcher, who is a student at, he actually was a student here in Hawaii at UH for a while, and now he's back over at the U of U. So even though the red is U of U, it's still a seaside of red. So the color's right, maybe not the name. So Scott?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. If there's one thing I know about my dad, he will have no problem taking up time, so I'm going to make this very brief. My dad is a proud graduate of the University of Utah, and as you can see, we're representing a little bit today. So if anybody has any questions of which school to go to, which is the right school, you can come and talk to us after. After that, he got a master's in business administration from the Kellogg School at the University of Northwestern, and from there he jumped into the family business. He's the third generation chemical distributor, and we'll see, I guess, if there's going to be a fourth generation. I'm starting to look into other things, but we'll see what happens. But I hope that today he can impart some of that knowledge and the insights about business, about running a small business, about starting a small business that he has with myself. So with that, I'll just turn the rest of the time over to him.
Thank you, Brother Tanner and Scott. I'm really excited to be here today, and I'm thankful for this opportunity that Brother Tanner has given me to speak to you. I have two purposes today. One is to tell you about the business that I was a part of, and I'm one of those unusual people that has had only one job in his life. I started with the company at 15 years old, and I've done every single job there. And now I'm president of the company. And I'd like to just tell you a little bit about the company because it has a very interesting story. It's a very interesting company that we've been able to create. And also I want to talk to you about the important parts of business and the essence of business is what my lecture is entitled today. And one of the things, too, I want to talk about is and especially in this setting, it's really neat because I can talk about the religious side of things and the business side of things. My son even has some questions about how you're able to manage your business life and the gospel and your church life together. And I think it's quite easy, and I hope to be able to show you how they complement each other. So first, let me just tell you about our company. It started in 1967. My grandfather started a business, local chemical business in 1923, and my father was involved with that. But it had kind of a complicated ownership situation, so he decided to leave in 1967 with his brother and start this new business. I still remember how traumatic that move was, and it started from very, very humble beginnings. It was the true American dream. It was an entrepreneurial situation from the very beginning, where it started on the kitchen table in my father's house with no employees, no customers, no facilities, no suppliers. And we've been able to overcome that initial challenge, which is that Booz Allen Hamilton, I believe, made a study that 4 out of 5 new businesses fail within the first 5 years. And we've been able to overcome that challenge. And I don't know how many businesses get to $1 million from that list. I don't know how many get to $100 million. I'm not sure how many get to $200 million, but we've been able to make those milestones. And we now have 380 employees. In 11 different locations, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And we are in the chemical business, which is one that is, you get a lot of publicity when there's a problem or there's a leak or some kind of pollution, but the growth and the society that's been built up in the last 100 years and all the progress that's been made has a lot to do with the chemical industry, because everything that you see around you is chemicals. And I'll explain that a little bit as we move along. But the company started again in 1967, and we have been able to move forward, and we really want it to endure. We want it to move forward and not just be sold or not continue. So let's talk about some of the industries that are served by our company. We're a pretty diversified company. We're in the mining. We serve the mining industry, oil and gas, the medical. We're in the medical field, and we're also in photographic chemicals, industrial and institutional cleaning, water treatment, water and wastewater treatment, in the construction industry, electronics, agriculture, and we also have a transportation company. So you look at something like that and say, how do you manage something like that? Well, it's been very good because our diversity helps us to, and they complement each other. And when we build a plant, we don't just build a plant with one thing, we build it with several. Let me just talk about some of these industries that are quite interesting. For example, if you go to the doctor's office and have some blood taken, that iodine prep that they put on your arm was probably made at our plant in Salt Lake City, because we have a large share of that surgical prep market. And we do iodophores and hand sanitizers for the medical industry. We're an FDA-approved establishment, so it's quite interesting. In the industrial and institutional cleaning side, we have a plant in Las Vegas that, believe it or not, there are 45 million pounds of laundry washed every month in Las Vegas. We have something to do with 30 million pounds of it. One of our customers is a company that had the contract to redigitize the Star Wars movies. In the water treatment side, we supply some of the primary water treatment products for Tampa, Florida, all the way to the North Bay Consortium up in California. And I was actually making some calls on the Sand Island plant here in Honolulu to see about selling some products to them. So it's a very interesting business, one that's very, very important, and it is an interesting business because of the way it's developed and the diversification we have. Here are our locations. We have 11. The first one was in Salt Lake City, and then we moved out to Montana. That was a situation where one of the customers there wanted us to come and help them with one of their raw materials, and they were very helpful to get us established there, and they helped us get establish the business community there and helped us move the plant forward, and that's a really good way to expand. We have not purchased any companies. Everything has been done by internal financing. So we went to Missoula, then we went down to Henderson, Nevada, which is near Las Vegas, the Buckeye, Arizona plant. Then we went all the way to Williamson, New York, which is 15 miles north of the Hill Cumorah. And it's in Wayne County. It was primarily for the construction business, also for Kodak. Then we had our plant in Downey, California. And then we moved out to and developed 2 plants in Florida. And then we have just recently purchased some property in, we just finished the plant in Sacramento. And then we have a brand new plant in Glendive, Montana for the oil and gas industry up in North Dakota. That is a game changer. They say that if they get all the oil out of North Dakota, it's bigger than Saudi Arabia. And pretty soon, the United States, well, it is already one of the largest, or one of the largest energy producers in the world. It's going to have energy, almost self-sufficiency in the years ahead, and it's been a real interesting situation in the oil and gas side. So Steve Jobs, you all know, and Walter Isaacson did a really great biography of Steve, and one of the things he wrote about is what he thinks about entrepreneurs. Let me read that to you. It was quite interesting. I think I just moved the... He says, I hate it when people call themselves entrepreneurs when what they really want to do is launch a startup and then sell or go public so that they can cash in and move on. They're unwilling to do the work that it takes to build a real company, which is the hardest work in business. That is how you really make a contribution and add to the legacy of those who went before. You build a company that will still stand for something a generation or two from now. That's what Walt Disney did, and Hewlett and Packard and the people who build Intel. They created a company to last, not just to make money. That's what I want Apple to be. So that's our philosophy in our family. We don't want to sell the company and go do something else. We think that owning a business, providing jobs to people, providing options for customers, providing products, creating wealth, is one of the greatest things we can do in our lives and has a best contribution. So I want you to all feel like business is a very important calling, a very worthy calling, and think of it that way. I remember when I was a student in the mid-'70s, they would have, some of the business students would come out during commencement and you'd hear boos. It's now one of those situations where I hope that you can, again, see that business is a way to serve, a way to be able to help people, and that it's a noble calling. I had a number of great teachers and great mentors and people that cared about me and a very strong family. One of them was Dr. Ram Sharan, who was a professor that I had a class from at Northwestern. And what he always wanted us to do is find the essence, find the most important things and concentrate on them. So one of the exercises he did was he came and he said, I want everything in one page plus exhibits. I want you to take this business, and it was a strategy class, I want you to take this business and put everything into one page plus exhibits, which made you do some pretty critical thinking of what you should include. One of the examples that he gave was about Air India. And he was saying that in Air India in the early 70s, it wasn't doing very well, losing money, poor service, and Mrs. Gandhi, the Prime Minister at the time, went to this Indian industrialist and said, I want you to take over Air India for me. So he went back and talked to his two sons, and the one son said, hey, great, I can get free tickets now. I'm going to be able to get an in and fly wherever I want. The other son said, what do you know about running an airline? Why would you be chosen for that? And he listened and smiled. Then he called up the president of Air India and said, please come over to my home. He came to his home, sat in his study, and he said, let me make something very clear to you. Number one, I don't know anything about running an airline. Number two, I don't want to learn anything about running an airline. Number three, I'm never coming to the office. But here's what I want from you every day. By you, on this desk, I want you to come and bring me a list of every flight that is more than 30 minutes late. I want to know the name of the flight crew and the name of the grounds crew that was responsible for getting it off the ground. In 6 months, just knowing that, he turned Air India around. It started becoming profitable, well-run, because he knew which ones were the problems, the people that were not doing their job and getting the flights out on time. So he gave me this desire to think of what's important and think of the critical things in my life. And I've tried to distill those for you on these slides moving forward. And another person that I had a lot of help and understanding of life and the gospel was President McKay, who of course has a very important role in this university and is someone who we all have had some training from and teaching from. He was outside of his apartment at the Hotel Utah one day and found some workmen. And he said, hey, let me tell you about the fact that you will soon have a personal priesthood interview with the Savior. And here's what he's going to ask you. If you'd like to know what he's going to ask you, let me list these for you. The first one, he says, he will request an accountability about your relationship with your spouse. Now, he was talking to some men, but it goes for all the ladies here as well, where he says, have you been actively engaged in making them happy and ensuring that their needs have been met as an individual? The second thing, he will want an accountability report about each of your children individually. He will not attempt to have this for simply a family stewardship report, but will request information about your relationship to each and every child. Third, he will want to know what you personally have done with the talents you've been given in the pre-existence. Number 4, he will want a summary of your activity in your church assignments. He will not necessarily be interested in what assignments you've had, for in his eyes, the home teacher and the mission president are probably equals. But he will request a summary of how you've been of service to your fellow men in your church assignments. And then fifth, he said he will have no interest in how you earned your living, but he wants you to know if you were honest in all your dealings. And then finally, he will ask for an accountability of what you've done to contribute in a positive manner to your community, state, country, and the world. So that gives us a framework for what's important in a spiritual sense, in a gospel sense. And I honestly believe that everything is spiritual. That you don't separate when you go to work what you've learned in church, and that everything is important, and it's all spiritual. And so let's move forward with, I've come up with, in the spirit of Dr. Sharon, 10 items that I think are important in business. And hopefully you can see how they have a spiritual component and how they complement what we're trying to do in our church and gospel sense in our lives, so that we can return to our Father in heaven. So, the essence of running a business. The first thing is that you have to have a customer focus. You have to know that the reason a business exists, and this is what Peter Drucker said, was that it's to create a customer and to serve each customer. In the truest sense of business, it's service. It's pure service. And the ones that do that well succeed, and the ones that don't succeed. And so if you keep a customer focus, that's the most important thing you can remember. And each relationship and each part of customer service needs to be a win-win proposition. In other words, you have to understand what the customer needs and what the company needs and the vendor needs. And they should be equal and not a disadvantage of one or the other. So that's, I think, the most important thing. Next, you need to protect the brand. You have a reputation. Establishing and maintaining key values are an if not forget it. And it's even more so because whenever we have vendor proposals that we're giving out, they want to know, have you had any accidents? What is your safety rating? What quality issues have you had? What lawsuits are you in? What kind of environmental problems have you had? You need to have strong company values, and you need to be able to communicate that to everybody. So during the last year, our senior management group never had these written down. It was like an unwritten constitution. We had these values, and I felt them and knew what they were, but we wrote them down and carefully chose our words so that everyone in the company could have these values and understand them and know that we're serious about them. And what I said is I want these more to be just nice words on a page, and I think they're very well written, and we struggled over a lot of these words ourselves, each word. But it said what we wanted, but unless you actually put them into practice, they don't mean anything. The other thing I told them that I wanted them to do is to be able to have these values so that I could give you courage. How so? When the truck driver is in northern Nevada and it's snowing on a January night, and he is driving along and he doesn't feel like it's a safe thing to go forward, and he's being pressed to get that delivery to the customer, he can say, no, the first important value is safety. And he can then pull off and use his judgment about being safe. And so that's one of the reasons we have this. But that is something that you always need to keep in mind. Protecting the integrity and the values and the reputation of your company is an if not, forget it. Number two, this is something that Dr. Kotler in Northwestern gave to me in my first marketing class. You need a marketing rather than a sales focus. Now, what is a sales focus? A sales focus is, hey, I've got these products I want to sell to you. A marketing focus is, what do you need in order to get your needs taken care of? Let me get them for you. And so instead of pushing some product that may not be as good for them, you are tailoring what you're offering your customers for what their needs are. And you come up, and that's why we have a pretty broad line. We don't just have one product that we need to sell. We have a variety of products, and we try to tailor it to the individual customer. Now, choosing and building an effective team is critical to the success of a business. Why? I know this firsthand. Hank Paulson, the former Secretary of the Treasury, talked about in a recent documentary about all of the business leaders and government leaders that he knew, and one of the things he said about all of them, they're all flawed. They all make mistakes. They're not perfect. They need a team to help them. Robert Townsend, who took Avis Rent-A-Car and gave Hertz a run for their money when it was a real also-ran, talked about his experience where he said, whenever I had an idea of my own, my batting average was probably 300. But when I had the team and got help, it was 700. He was much more effective. So building a team is important. And one of the things I'm most proud of at our company is that we've got a team of vice presidents that have an area of expertise and are very helpful to do their job and to help the team be successful. Again, as a leader, you can't know everything. You've got to depend on others to help you. And you're much better when you vet it with others in your company and get their ideas. Not only with the senior management people, but others in the company. And that leads us to the next issue, and that is, the next point, that we try to preach very much the value of the individual in the company. That everyone has their own perspective, their own life experiences, their own values and ways of looking at things. And all of them are important. I remember what Mother Teresa said, that, sometimes you think what you contribute is just like a drop in the ocean, but the world would be less for that one drop. So this is one of the hardest things I have in my company, is to let people know, I really do want you to tell me when I'm wrong. I want you to come to me and tell me what we're doing wrong to help me. And if you've got some ideas for improvement, I want to hear it. Because the people that know the most are the people on the firing line. And I had a chance to do that because I grew up in the plant. And I worked summers and after school, and I had those jobs. And what I found is most of those people just needed to be supported properly. That they knew they wanted to do a good job. They didn't want to just put their time in. They wanted to be part of a company, and they wanted to do a good job, and they had ideas, but people wouldn't listen to them. And that's what we try to do. And do I do that as well as we should? No. But we're trying, and I'm trying to overcome that prejudice they had maybe from another job that says, please don't rock the boat. We need somebody to come and help us. And I just had that situation just a while ago. We had a load of ferric chloride in our plant in Sacramento. We had to get that load out the next day. The general manager called up and says, I'm not going to make it. The valve fitting I have, I need a new one. This is not going to make it. I said, thank you. That's what we need. That's what I need to encourage. But it's easy to say it and then knock people down when they actually put it into practice. So I think that's so very important. The idea of a passenger or a team member, one of the things I'd like you to do is go to YouTube and look up the normalization of deviance. There are 3 sections. It's done by a Mr. Malloy, who was a former astronaut, talked about why they had the Challenger disaster, but he also talks about being a passenger or a team member. And what he says is that it's very important that you are a team member, not just a passenger, that you're actually contributing and trying to do the right thing, and you get your thoughts known because you are a unique individual with unique talents, and you need to be heard. And part of that is, are you a passenger or a team member? So go to the number 3 on his YouTube and look at Bingo Fuel and listen to that, and it'll help explain what that means to be a team member instead of a passenger. Finally, report cards. I know that Jack Welch, who was considered one of the greatest CEOs in the country, was very big on report cards. He said everyone should have a report card from the first grade till the day they die. And what is that? That's a situation where people get to have an honest evaluation of what reality is. Thomas Sowell said that people who don't like you tell you what you want to hear. People that care about you tell you what you need to hear. And I'm telling you, you've got to find those people that can tell you what you need to hear and what you need to know. That is so critical, because we all sometimes, it was, in my consumer research class, they said that if your mind is made up, everything will prove your point. And also what happens is that I had a friend of mine that said, our company thinks we're here, but we're really here. And how do we improve when we think we're better than we actually are? And I'm telling you, I think we're doing pretty well until I get some of those surveys back from customers. Some of us think we're 5 out of 5, but others think we're 1 out of 1. And those are the ones that are most important. And a lot of times, it doesn't take much to get them corrected. But you got to be aware of them. You got to be introspective. You got to do your own personal evaluation of yourself. But also, you need people that will help you to understand what reality really truly is and what other people are thinking. Maybe it's incorrect. You can help get that changed. But it's important to know where you stand and know what other people are thinking. And it's one of those situations where, isn't that what the gospel is talking about too? What did King Benjamin say? You got to be humble. You will not learn unless you're humble. And in our business, I get humbled regularly. We talk about mistakes. We make a lot of mistakes. And ours are quite well seen. If you have a spill or some kind of a problem, we get on the news. We get a lot of press. Every time we have a situation where there's a negative inspection by one of the regulators, they put out a press release. They use it as a way to get compliance by making it as big and as terrible as it can be. So what you need is, you need to be humble, and you need to be willing to change and improve. And again, in the first chapter of James, the last verse, it talked about what true religion is. True religion is service, and it's working on self-improvement and perfection. That's what I think you'll be successful in business if you do those 2 things also. Nicholas Taleb came up with the idea of anti-fragile. He wrote a book on anti-fragile. And what that is a situation where, like Joseph Smith at the Liberty Jail, God was trying to teach him something. And what it was is, you grow stronger by learning from adversity. My father always told me when I was growing up, do not take the path of least resistance. Risk-taking and adversity are key elements of business, and you need to face them with courage and without doubt and move forward, because what you should think of them as, is learning experiences. And that's what you can really be able to become type of person you want to be, is when you are anti-fragile, when you learn from those mistakes, and you learn from the problems, and you get stronger. Now, one thing about anti-fragile that he said is you want to be able to manage your risks. So what he says is one of the reasons that we aren't leveraged or have any outside debt is because then we can be, we don't take those risks that put the company at a risk of going out of business. And that's one way that you are anti-fragile. But I would encourage you to read that book. It's very interesting. Another point is that I was always told, watch the money. Watch the financials. Look at your financials and see where your business is going. And I get surprised all the time. For example, we had a situation where we were putting up food-grade soda ash and bagging it. We were getting $8 a ton for it. I thought, well, that's pretty good because our normal bagging is $20 a ton. But food-grade bagging took a little bit more. The cost accountants, who are the ones that show what reality is, not what you think it is, came in and said, our cost is $76. I said, that can't be possible. And you look at it, and it was. It was something that I didn't expect. But the money, the one thing good about business is that you have that as the guidepost. And what you want to be able, when I was a chemistry major, for example, I was used to A plus B equals C. You had a right answer. When I went off to business school, they said, how do we run this business? And they came in with all these ideas and put them all on the board, and I was waiting for the answer. There wasn't any answer. You have different styles, and some companies can be very autocratic. Some people can be very loose and not have much structure, and they can all be successful. You look at some of these new business startups that occurred, and it's really interesting. Sometimes as you see, the way people used to do it is not the way you should be doing it. The way they teach it in college, again, the Steve Jobs example, when I was in college, with graduate school, they said, if your product is in an A and your customer's at B, don't try to move those customers to A, you try to move A to the customers. But what did Steve Jobs say? My customers don't know what they want. I'm going to come up with great products and show them what they want. So it's important that you have a view of your financials so that you can look at the lifeblood of the company, which is you need to make a profit to survive. As again, Drucker said, profit is a minimum concept, not a maximum concept. Steve Jobs says, I make profit so I can make great products. The other people have to have a minimum profit or they can't get financing. Look at the power companies who are monopolies. They have to make a minimum profit in order to be able to attract capital and be able to do their function. And so profit is a minimum concept, not a maximum concept. But it is so important that you can look at a company and no matter what their business is, the financials will tell you all about them. Do they have unfunded pension liabilities? How are their debt being structured? How is the sales in their business going? So all that can come from the financials. One thing that we're able to do is we have an ability, because we are self-funded and because we're a non-public company, to think long-term. I don't have to worry about what the next stock analyst is going to say in their meeting or what the quarterly numbers are. I need to keep those in mind, and I can't have them falling apart. But on the other hand, I can make investments in the future that may not be paying off immediately in order to move the company forward in the future. So think long-term, not short-term. And I think some of the short-term thinking has been a real detriment to our economy and the companies in our country because of some short-term thinking that they have in trying to get them looking good for the stockholders or the market analysts or the accountants or the attorneys or the regulators. Finally, let me just say that you need to, again, feel good about the business that you're in and what you're doing. It's got to be a company that you can take some pride in the products. It's something that you need to feel good about who you're working for. And also, you need to have fun in what you're doing. Now, one of the things about it, I have some of those issues where I have some struggles, I have some difficulties, but I enjoy when the problems get solved and when we're able to be able to move forward and get them taken care of, and the challenges are met. And so it's important that you enjoy the whole process. I enjoy going to meet customers where you sometimes get siloed in certain areas or you get sheltered. Business is a great way to meet people that you wouldn't normally meet. I was just in China on a buying trip and met with some of our long-term suppliers that we've had wonderful relationships with. And it's a wonderful way to break down barriers that sometimes these natural borders have, or the national borders have, the different cultures, because in a business situation, a lot of things are be able to mutually benefit each other, and it's a great way to get to know people and break down some of the barriers that separate us. Thomas Friedman talks about the fact that if you look at the fact that there has never been a war between two countries that have McDonald's. And they said, well, what about the Falklands? No, the McDonald's in Argentina did not come until after the Falklands. The fact that we are all now in a global situation on business where it's much smaller and the globe is shrinking is going to help, I think, is one of the things that will help move, help the success of humanity moving forward, because you'll be using people's energies to create wealth and help others rather than have disputes. And in a business situation, you work out your disputes because you don't want unhappy customers. You want to be able to move forward with a positive win-win situation. You don't want to have a dispute and let that get in the way. And finally, let me just say that my father had some of the best advice from his father when he asked him, hey, I've got a paper I've got to write. What should I write about? I don't know what to write about. And his advice was, start writing. If you don't know what you want to do, dabble in a few things. Ask some people. Get engaged. And I would say that not only in committing in the church or in your marriage or in business, you've got to be in the game. You've got to be involved. You've got to be doing something. You've got to be trying something. It's very difficult to move forward when you're on the sidelines. Now, Elbert G. Hubbard was a writer and philosopher at the turn of the century, and he was tragically killed on the Lusitania when it was torpedoed by German U-boats in 1915. I have this over my office wall, and when I have a tough day, I look at it and read it because it's quite succinct on his advice. He says, a little more persistence, a little more effort, and what seemed hopeless failure may turn to glorious success. There is no failure except in no longer trying. There is no defeat except from within, no really insurmountable barrier save our own inherent weakness of purpose. So when I get a little wobbly sometimes, I read that and find out that I've got to get stronger. I've got to, it's my own fault if there's some problems. And if you keep moving forward, if you keep trying, you're going to find that you'll have some glorious successes and not just failures from not trying. Now, I've had a number of, I said, people who were very helpful to me in my career, great leaders that I knew, professors, friends, family members. I'd like to be able to be a mentor for you if possible. And if you have any questions that I can answer, I have my email address. That's a great thing. When I was in college, just as 1976 when I graduated, no computers, no email, no internet, no voicemail. no cell phones, no FedEx. Can you imagine? We did have electric typewriters, thankfully, but there's been a lot. This is such a wonderful thing now that we've got the internet, and I think one of the things that will move the whole world forward is when we get more people connected, and there will be more people that will be able to have access to information that isn't filtered through somebody else. This is my work phone, and this is my mobile phone. I carry with me all the time. And this is the company website. If you have some questions on that, we're trying to improve it, but it does give you a kind of an idea of what we're doing. But I would love to have you reach out if you'd like. I'd love to have you if you're looking for a job or trying to get answers to something. One of my professors in chemistry, Professor Dr. Walling, they said, Dr. Walling has an opinion on everything. And I have an opinion on everything, and I'm not afraid to share it. Now, it may not be correct, but I do have an opinion on most of everything. And I'm happy to mentor you if you'd like, and have this more than just an hour that we're together and then we go our separate ways and we're gone. I hope that some of these things will help you and give you a different way of looking at things. And I really, again, appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and to be able to share some of my ideas. And I'm anxious to hear what questions you have. And if you've got some things that you don't agree with, I love that too. So I'm ready to take some questions. Please.
It's interesting for me how you deal with the environmental issues, for example, creating all those chemicals and using them, for example, the detergents.
Okay, the question was, how do we deal with all of our environmental issues? And there are very big environmental issues. Interestingly enough, I would say maybe 30 or 40% of what we sell is for environmental treatment and for remediation. And so what we provide helps the environmental problems, and we do a lot in that realm. But what we try to do is have good training, and then what we do is audit very carefully to make sure that we're doing what we have been trained to do. In other words, what we try to do is say, look, the environmental stewardship is not just the VP of Environmental Health and Safety. Everyone in the company needs to be involved in that effort. And so what we do is we train them to know what should be done. We have very good infrastructure. For example, we don't build a plant where you have to have respirators on all the time. You need to have proper fume collection and treatment. And then you let people know again, how to use those and give proper training. Then we audit to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to. And then every single incident we have, we do a what if, and we review them. Not only for the plant, but also for our transportation department. And it's very good to get those root causes. And we try to also be proactive. One of the things we say is, we don't want to learn from our mistakes. We don't want to make mistakes. And I say, we're like the nurse in the maternity ward. You can't go around and say, hey, I've carried 3,000 babies and only dropped one. We have to not drop any babies. And so that's our philosophy on the environmental side. Please.
What would you say is the greatest challenge facing the Thatcher company?
The greatest challenge we have is being able to find the talent to manage our growth. When you're putting in these new plants, you've got to have very strong leadership and be able to have good people. And that doesn't come from looking for somebody in the monster ads a week before. You've got to be training those people many years in advance. And we are fortunate that as we get bigger, we have a little bigger talent pool. But that's really one of our biggest challenges, is find and train the people for the future so we can have a continuation of our company and also have our company to grow. Because if you don't have those people in those slots, you can have the greatest ideas, the greatest financing, the best product. You can't get it made, you can't get it you can't get it move forward, because you have to have people that are in those positions, and they have to be very skilled and knowledgeable, and that doesn't come overnight. Good question, please.
So if you were to, with the students here, to say there's one industry to go forward today for you where I think there would be a great industry that's exploding, that you could build a multi-hundred million company like yourself, what industry would you recommend?
Well, you know, I look back at what my father accomplished and what he was doing in 1967. I don't know if I could duplicate what he did. I think that's a lot harder now than it was in 1967. And not just because of the regulations. I mean, when we started, there was no EPA, there was no RECRA, there was no filling out all these forms. They were, it was just a little easier to get a business started, and there weren't a lot of this situation where, you know, it isn't don't build, it's build nothing absolutely anywhere. I mean, it's one of those situations where it's not just don't build near me, don't build at any place. So you've got those kind of situations where they're discouraging companies and they're not making it easy for you to start. But there are opportunities, and many, many opportunities, and I can only speak for the business that we have. Each one of those product areas are ones that we think are going to be real world beaters in the years ahead, and one that we have an advantage for. The one I'm most excited about, like I said, was that oil and gas situation. It is a game changer. It is going to bring business back to the United States, manufacturing. It's going to be something where you're going to have less carbon footprint because of all the natural gas. We have a 100-year supply of natural gas that will allow us to have a bridge to when we can go into renewables, and we don't have to rush those renewables through because it will give us that gap. But whatever you want to do, the lady that did the Spanx, who came up with that idea for the woman's undergarment, who put together, she's the youngest woman billionaire in history. And you listen to her story, I wouldn't have thought that would be $1 billion company that she could create. But there are plenty of opportunities, and I think what the country needs is people, young people like you are the future of where we are and where we're going, and you need to be able to come up with these ideas for the Googles and the Apples and other things in the future, and the horizontal drilling and some of these other things that were developed, or we won't be able to survive, and we will become a second-class power. And the United States has been the leader of the world, and if you don't have a strong business situation there, you lose your leadership in everything else you're doing. You're not the beacon for freedom anymore. You're not the beacon for opportunity and the shining light of opportunity. You become somebody that makes it difficult to start a business and difficult to grow a business, and then we all are impoverished. Because when I went to China, it's amazing what has happened to the number of people that have come up through the middle class and what that country has done in the last 30 or 40 years. But what foreign aid did they have? They just came up with a kind of a hybrid free enterprise capitalist system that allowed people to be let loose and their potential realized, and look what they've done. It's an amazing situation that they've done. And what happens sometimes too is that when you look at people and you try to help them, the church has always said that you try to help someone, but don't make them dependent. And what happens is that we've changed that a little bit in our national scene, and you don't want people to suffer, but sometimes, you get adversity, things don't work out the way you want. Colonel Sanders, for example, had Kentucky Fried Chicken started after he had retired because the freeway took away the access to his restaurant, and he had to do something else. So there's all kinds of opportunities and things that we need to do that come from some of these things that look like they're disguised blessings. Any more? You have one more, please?
Yeah, kind of a follow-up to
Yeah.
what's something that we can be doing now as students getting ready to go into the workforce to really prepare to be that talent that you're looking for?
What can you do to prepare yourself and to go into business as a student now? One of the things I think is very, very important is that you take some English classes and learn to write. If you can't be articulate, if you can't say what you want, and it's a shock to me, I use my English classes a lot more than my chemistry classes. So that's very, very important. The other thing is be awake. Be curious. Be somebody that is always asking questions and is somebody that is really trying to look for opportunities, because there are opportunities every place. And some of the networking you do in this setting, again, can be used later on. Some of the job opportunities that come are, gives you paths that you would go down that are only, your starting career, your starting job is a really very important part of your moving forward in the business world. So you can do that right now while you're in school. But again, talk to your fellow students. Those books that I talked about, the marketing book that Dr. Kotler put out, a lot of the texts I still refer to. There's a lot of good learning and good background that you can get, and then look for an opportunity to take those and put into practice. Because again, business is a wonderful career, a wonderful thing to be getting into, and hopefully you'll be able to see that that's a way also that you can balance your spiritual goals and your earthly goals together. And thank you so much for allowing me to come today and to speak to you. And again, it's been a wonderful opportunity, and I wish you the best in your future careers, and I hope I've been able to give you something new to think about and another way of viewing business and the career that I've chosen. Thank you very much.